Well, hello. Good afternoon or morning, everyone. Thank you for joining another edition of the IDP Guys Waiver Wire Show, the Week 15 version. Crazy that we're here already. Almost done with the season. Only a couple more of these. Hopefully, we've helped you get to the playoffs, and hopefully, we'll help you get through the playoffs now. So, starting off, just want to thank Sean Teague last week for jumping in, who can be found on Twitter. I did not write that down. Give me 1 second. But yeah, I just want to thank him for jumping in last week and helping out. He can be found at Sean8386 on X. Great follow there. One of our great writers. It was great to have him last week. And also thank you to Justin, who is unable to join us again this week, but hopefully we'll be back next week, but still did awesome work with the show doc. Yeah, so thank all of you guys for joining, and please ask away with any questions you may have. Yeah, we will get into the waiver wire pretty soon. A couple plugs first. Just remember to go to idpguys.org as we are rebranding to IDP Plus, and go ahead, give us a subscribe. You can get access to our Discord, all of our great articles, previews, reviews, etc., our snap tools, and fantasy finish against and allowed tools, allowed by position tool, both of which I'll reference often in the show. And yeah, so give us a follow, subscribe on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I'm on Instagram. Justin's not, but yes. So before we do get into the wire, it was another injury-riddled week, as they all have been. Yeah, so first injury to go into, starting with the quarterbacks, one that hurts my heart very, very much. Justin Herbert, who is my personal favorite player to watch in the league and someone I'm super high on, has a fractured finger and went on IR this morning. So that sucks for him, for the Chargers, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, etc. Just kind of brutal for them, especially going right into the playoffs. Texans quarterback CJ Stroud had a concussion against the Jets and their blowout loss and left early. Davis Mills to replace. Concussions have been weird this year, so not sure how that will go with him, but hopefully we get him to start. Otherwise, losing 2 top 8 quarterbacks on the year in 1 week is not great. Geno Smith as well injured his groin during practice on Friday, I believe it was, and had to leave and was unable to play on Sunday. Drew Lock came in, played actually pretty well. With Geno, we're not sure how long he will be out, if he will miss another game or not. He was a game time decision this week, but reports were that this injury is typically a 2-week injury. So we'll see there. Kenny Pickett did undergo surgery on his ankle. IR is still not expected at this point, as Mitchell Trubisky tries to help push the Steelers towards the playoffs at this point. Running back wise, in the hello, Caspian. My cat is saying hello. Well, one of our cats. Hello, sorry about that. Internet decided to cut out for a second. Running backs, we lost the starting running back for both teams in the Vikings-Raiders game, where Josh Jacobs left with a knee injury and Alexander Mattison with an ankle injury. Don't love to see that. Looks like both might miss this upcoming week, but we'll have to keep an eye out on that, and we will get into their replacements. All right, and we're back again. So sorry. Yeah, Justin Jefferson left with a chest injury. He's considered day-to-day. but he did go to the hospital right after the injury, so we will see what goes there. The Texans really just had a rough day with injuries, with Tank Dell leaving last week and going to miss the rest of the season, CJ Stroud's concussion. Nico Collins had a calf injury, left very early, did not return. Looks like we'll miss this upcoming week as well. They also lost Will Anderson and Blake Cashman. Excuse me. Will Anderson and Blake Cashman also left the game. Cashman, it does also sound like will miss some time. Unsure yet on Anderson's status for next week, but another thing to monitor. Well, Jonathan Grenard did go off and had a couple sacks this week, which was nice to see. For the 49ers, Javon Hargrave left with a hamstring injury, did not return. Travarius Ward left with a groin injury and also did not return. Have not seen much on their availability for next week as of yet, but those injuries do typically last a few weeks, so would not be shocked if we don't have either of them. And he's not in the wire this week, just with uncertainty with Javon Hargrave and with Eric Armstead, who missed last week. But if one or both miss, then Javon Kinlaw ends up being a good pickup and play in the defensive tackle lineup. He saw the most defensive tackle snaps for the Niners this week, so just something to keep on the very back burner. Linebacker Jamin Davis for the Commanders, shoulder injury, IR, season's over. Don't love to see it. Sucks to see guys get hurt at this point, especially when they're really kind of turning it on a bit. For the Seahawks, Devon Witherspoon had a lower back injury, did not return. Saw earlier that Pete Carroll said that he should be good to go this week, but something to monitor still. And finally, Kyle Hamilton, another one of my favorite players to watch in the league and someone who I was super high on this offseason, left with what turned out to be a sprained MCL. He's day-to-day right now. We'll see if he does end up playing this week. Coach Harbaugh said that there was a good possibility he would play, but remains to be seen. And we'll get into some potential replacements for both Witherspoon and Hamilton in case they do miss. So, buys. This is the last time we're going to have to talk about bye weeks, thank goodness. And coming off those buys are the Arizona Cardinals and Washington Commanders. So one last reminder, if there are any startable players, such as Jahan Dotson, James Conner, should be weird, or someone else who starts for one of those teams who's a good player, if they were dropped due to roster constraints and them being on a bye, go take a look. They won't come up in typical last week stats ordering, so just take a look, see if anyone got dropped sillily, and maybe take advantage of that and get a huge jump for the playoffs. And one last reminder, shoot in any questions. I do not see any in there as of yet, but if you have any questions, shoot them out, and I will answer them as they come in, related to their positions as well. So let's go ahead and get into the waiver wire. And if you can hear my cat in the background, I apologize. He's being very needy right now. Okay, so we're going to start with the defensive line. Last week, the names that Sean and I gave, with help from Justin, of course, were Kobe Turner, who had his first loss of a game in quite a while. If you followed the IDP guys on Twitter, there was a fun poll that was put out that he was the answer to. And conveniently, I saw that pretty early, so I was able to be one of the first to answer it. And knowing it was him, he's been great this season for IDP, especially the last few weeks. So I do still feel good about playing him and pretty much every week in the defensive tackle league. So yeah, that trivia was that he's been a top 24 DT or better in 5 consecutive games, and he's had 3 top 15 finishes since week 8. So he's been pretty awesome. This week was a loss, but that'll happen. We also did give Jonathan Grenard as an option, and he was great. 6 tackles, 2 sacks, even while losing by 3 scores. Can't really ask for much more than that. With Will Anderson going down, we'll see what that does for Grenard in the future, but still feels like a decent upside play. So the names we will get into for this week, starting with a defensive tackle, Derek Brown for the Carolina Panthers. Panthers have had a rough season overall, but Brown has actually been pretty good. In 7 straight games, he has 4+ tackles. This past week, he had 10 tackles. It's for the second time he has hit that number. Against Atlanta in week 1, who was their opponent this week, he had 8 tackles and his only sack of the year. Atlanta is a run-heavy team, whether with Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, or even Desmond Ridder. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Brown to make some plays. In a defensive tackle league, in our previews, he's going to be a borderline stud player, I would assume. One of last night's blow-up players is the next man on the list, Harold Landry, who is really rounding back into form finally after his injury. Over his past 8 games, he has 7.5 sacks, and in the last 5 games, he has 3+ tackles in each of those with 31 total. He had 3 sacks last night and really was just kind of dominating the whole game, won the game for him at the end. Really nice to see him actually back and hopefully fully back. He's a very talented, fun player, got a big extension last year before his injury, and now really rounding it out and showing out what he is. Again, 7.5 tackles over 8 games. You can't ask for much more than that. That's some elite production there. And then finally, the last name we're going to give for the defensive line is DJ Wonnum, who has the Cincinnati Bengals matchup this week, or Wonnum is with the Vikings. And he's been pretty solid all season. He has a sack in 6 of the last 10 games. And in that span also has 3 tackles, at least in all but 1. Not a major upside player, but with that Brian Flores chaos defense, anyone is able to go off at any certain point, and he's been consistently doing it pretty well. He's been a good player. He's been good for them since Marcus Davenport went down. So, yeah. Again, reminder, any questions, feel free to shoot them in. Still do not see any, but don't be shy. We're going to get into the linebackers now. Where last week names we gave were Nick Bolton, who, well, he came back, was a big win, obviously. He's Nick Bolton. Servorcier Dennis, who tried to hit a couple times and still just didn't happen. So that one's a loss for us. Process, but didn't end up being the right guy. So hate to see that. Michael Walker ended up having a good game, even though Landon Roberts did play. So he's still a solid play. Seems like he's going to be their linebacker too, though Blake Martinez did have some run as well. And last name we had given was Shaq Leonard, who I don't believe he even suited it up, but it was more of a long-term guy. And Zach Cunningham did end up returning, which does hurt his ceiling long-term. But with how bad the linebackers have been, or at least how inconsistent they have been this year, he's still a good option for an upside later on. And now, so the names we have in linebacker this week are Christian Harris, who has been much maligned on this show and just in general, was an offseason darling of mine. Didn't do anything for a couple months and now is back and was playing well the last couple weeks. 10 tackles and a forced fumble this past week or 2 weeks ago. And now with, oh goodness, words just got difficult. Blake Cashman is now hurt, which takes away even more competition from him. So Harris really seems like he's one of the top, he's at least the top 2 linebacker there, maybe even the top guy, just depending on how things do roll with Cashman's health, Perryman's health, if they decide they like Toto again. So we'll see. He has 2 straight games with 10+ tackles and has been playing 90% of tackles in 3 of the last 4. So he's been doing well. He's a good play at this point. He's really turning into the player that we and I thought he could be this offseason. Unfortunate that took so long to get there, in a point where kind of gave up hope on him in many leagues, including trading him in my main dynasty league. But, live and learn. It hurts. It happens in this beautiful game. Next player we're going to talk about is someone else we were high on at the beginning of the year and after an injury to their starter. Ivan Pace Jr. has been absolutely phenomenal. Since Jordan Hicks went to IR, he has had 9 tackles in each game. Love to see that. Just can't ask much more for a linebacker there, except he went ahead and gave us more last week with 13 tackles, a sack, and a pick. It's like, dude just went crazy last week. It was a defensive struggle the whole game, 3-0, but still, he had an insane game. Finished as a top linebacker on the week. And having that knowing that he has that ceiling, he's really a borderline every week start at this point, especially since he does have a sack in back-to-back games. Next linebacker we're going to talk about also has a sack in back-to-back games, and that is Alex Singleton of the Broncos. He has played every snap for the last 10 games, then also has 2 others earlier in the season that he played 89% or more. In those 12 games, he has double-digit tackles in 10 of them. He's been as consistent as they go, and really, and still see that he is 27.7% owned on Sleeper. So if he's out there, that could be a nice, easy little pickup there. Just get a solid dozen tackles. And over the last 5 weeks, he's been averaging over a dozen tackles with 63 total. And again, a sack and 2 straight and a couple fumble recoveries earlier in that stretch. So he's really been a top linebacker. Have not heard much about him at all. So there's a good chance he is still out there in many leagues. So do think he is a good player to go ahead and pick up. Alrighty, let's get into the defensive backs. So last week, the names we gave were Mike Edwards, who was a win, ended up leading the Chiefs in tackles in place of Brian Cook. I need to double check that snap percentage or distribution real quick. So let me do that. And while we talk about the other name we gave, which was Jimmy Ward, who had another solid game. Nothing spectacular, but he's Jimmy Ward. Very good, steady player. And we do have a few more defensive backs this week. We're going to start with, they're not technically names we're giving, but just more players to keep an eye on. Julian Love, he ended up stepping into that slot role when Devon Witherspoon ended up going out early in that matchup. And he had a good game. I think 7 tackles and he's been very good. Yeah, 7 tackles and an interception on a tipped ball. So he's been very good when he has gotten time early in the season. Before Jamal Adams came back, he was great. And it really does seem like he is going to be the top slot guy if Witherspoon does end up missing any time. So just keep an eye out there. Other names with Kyle Hamilton also being injured. We saw Arthur Millette and Geno Stone getting uptick in snaps. Stone is someone who was leading the league in interceptions at least for 6 or 7 weeks. Was doing spectacular while Marcus Williams was out. So if he does end up getting an uptick in play, love to see that. He's been great. He's startable. He's honestly still probably startable in multi-safety or multi-defensive back leagues at this point, at least as an upside shot. Arthur Millette would then be the technical slot corner, but it still probably wouldn't have a huge role, but someone who is able to make some plays. So those are a couple names just to keep an eye on. And verifying that Mike Edwards did play pretty much every snap, and he was mostly the free safety, but still did have about a third of his snaps in the slot box area, which isn't ideal, but for someone who is more of a free safety, you'll take it. Okay, so defensive backs for this week. First name we're going to give is someone whose name we gave a few weeks ago, but this time Jordan Howden actually does have. So let me click on his name. There we go. Jordan Howden does actually have that role locked down. Marcus May went on IR. His fantasy season is over, and Howden's going to be the main guy in that backfield. He has, in the 2 games he has played, he's been very good for the Saints. He had 10 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble this week. He has 5 games of over 95% of snaps and has 8 or more tackles in 2 of them, including this week and a few weeks ago when we did mention him when Marcus May was ill, I believe, against who it was against. Not important, though. So he does have that role locked down. The Saints do like him a lot, viewed him as a very upside player, and he has the role locked down. So a 10 tackle and a sack upside is pretty great to have for a defensive back on waivers at this point. And they have the Giants, which has been a great matchup for most of the year. Except we'll see if touchdown Tommy is really turning that around for them. So next name to give is another rookie safety, Sidney Brown for the Eagles, who was by many viewed as the top defensive back IDP player coming into the year. I know Justin was in that boat. Took a while to get his legs under him to get really adjusted to the NFL game, but with Reed Blankenship missing some time and is now concussed, who should have added earlier, he saw his second game with 8+ tackles. The scary thing about this one against Seattle is that it is on Monday night. So if Blankenship, he has another day to get back and don't have 100% certainty there, I do still think Brown is a good pickup. Blankenship has really been struggling the last couple of weeks after a great start to the year. So it would not be a shock to see them just give Brown most of the work at this point anyway. Give the work to their rookie as their defense has really been falling apart as a whole. Yep. And then last name to give is a boundary corner for the Buccaneers, Zion McCollum, who was a 5th round. I think he went in the 5th round last year. He was someone I was super high on. I actually gave a late second round grade on him. Athletic freak. I think he had on his RAS score was like 9.98, very similar to Tariq Woolen, which worked out great last year and a little less this year. But he has 9 tackles in 2 of the last 3 games, and at least 4 in the last 5 games that he's played 80% of snaps. He's been seeing a lot of targets as well. Since week 9, no one in the league has seen more targets than him. He's seen 47 over that span, and the next closest is actually his teammate, Carlton Davis, who's seen 41, and then no one else has seen more than 40. So typically I'm not a huge proponent of playing boundary corners, but if you're going to see that level of targets, then yeah, there's going to be so many opportunities for tackles, big plays, etc. So do you think he's someone in a cornerback league, multi-corner league? I know there's a viewer who said they played 3 corners last week. So in a league like that, I think he's a sneaky pickup, someone you can play. He's going to get peppered. And yeah. So now we're going to jump over to the offensive side of the ball in just a minute. I think my kiddo just woke up, so I'm going to go give him his tablet real quick, and I'll be back in just 1 second. But if you have any questions, keep them coming. I'll be back in 20 seconds. Okay, and we're back. Thank you. Sorry about that. He's all taken care of now, and we're going to switch over to the offensive side of the ball. Another reminder, if you have any questions for offensive positions or defensive, feel free to shoot them in here. Still not seeing any coming in, but once they are, we'll get to them for you. So on the offense, starting with the signal caller, quarterbacks. Last week, the name we gave was Desmond Ridder, who, even though they did lose to the Buccaneers, Ridder had a great game. The Buccaneers have been a great matchup, so that's one to watch out for the rest of the season. Names, I have a couple names on here, but the main name we are going to talk about is Joe Flacco, who is now the Browns starting quarterback for the rest of the season, even though he is on the practice squad right now, which is just some roster manipulation stuff. He has been named the starter for the rest of the season and can be expected to be that. So in his 2 starts with the Browns, he's had 2 pretty great games. He was quarterback 13 2 weeks ago and the quarterback 10 this week, at least before Monday night. And I don't think Levis may have overtaken him, or touchdown Tommy, but either way, still a quarterback this week. He's attempted almost 90 passes over the last 2 weeks, has multiple touchdowns in each game. He had the first Browns 300-yard game in 2 years. So, yeah, he's been pretty awesome. 38-year-old Joe Flacco slinging the ball around. And the other name wanted to bring up is another older quarterback, Matt Stafford, who I do see is 54% owned on Sleeper. So I'm not sure if he is available, but he has been slinging the rock lately. In the last 3 weeks, he's been quarterback 7, 8, and 5. And that has not been against just some cupcake competition. He's gone against the Browns and the Ravens in that span. and he's just on another level right now. So another name to bring up. Both if Stafford is out there, I would prioritize him over Flacco, but if it is Flacco just out there, then I do think he is still a good pickup. I think he's startable this week, even with a Chicago matchup that has been more difficult over the last 4 weeks, but still do think he can put up a good game. Over to the running backs, where we have handcuff galore this week. But the names we gave last week were Zeke Elliott in his first game as a starter for the Patriots, and he had a spectacular game against the Steelers on Thursday night. Almost 10 catches, like over 150 total yards. Just great game. If we can see that every week, that would be such a steal at the end of the season. Tyjae Spears was another name we gave, and he went off having, I don't remember if he broke the 100-yard receiving mark, but he was pretty dang close to it. Also close to double-digit catches, and was pretty good on the ground as well. No touchdowns, but still, if you're going to get double-digit targets, that you can live with that. Other names we gave were Kenny Gainwell, who he's just a handcuff. We were thinking he might take over more of a role, and did at first, but does look like he's still the second fiddle there. But still top handcuff, and a lot of our thinking last week was that the Eagles do love to use him and used him a lot down the stretch last season. So that is still a possibility in a deep league. He is startable, in my opinion, especially against the Seahawks this week. Other name we gave was a duo of Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez, just with Brian Robinson's injury. They were on bye last week, so no stats, but the thought from 2 weeks ago where if Robinson is out, Antonio Gibson's already been an RB3 flex play, that would only go up, and then Rodriguez could fall into the end zone as the goal line back there. So this week we have one starting running back and then a couple handcuffs who might be starters. First, Deonta Foreman. The Bears it's been really hard to pin down their running back room all season, but looks like Foreman's the guy right now. He was the clear lead back last week, saw 55% of snaps, 14 opportunities, and which isn't a huge amount, but Justin Fields is there, so that was the clear top number. And excuse me 1 second again. And back again, so sorry. So Deonta Foreman, 14 carries, not a huge amount, but did lead the backfield by a lot. Justin Fields is there, is going to take into a lot of that. The next two matchups that the Bears have are pretty good matchups for the running backs in Cleveland and Arizona. Over the last 4 weeks, both have been top 8 opponents. So having a RB1 for a team at this point is a nice pickup you can get off waivers. So if you can get him, it's probably not going to be a 3-touchdown game like he had earlier in the year, but it is still it is still a possibility. Other names to get to: Chase Brown, rookie for the Bengals, has really been coming on as of late. He's still only at 30% of snaps, but has 20 total opportunities over the last 2 weeks. And those opportunities, just as a reminder, are carries plus targets. He had a big 55-yard screen touchdown reception this week. Bengals have been using the screen game a lot more with Jake Browning, and that was one thing that Chase Brown really did excel out at Syracuse. So good to see that for him. He has 170-ish total yards over the last 2 weeks and the touchdown last week as well. So he's really turning into a flexible play, even with a low snap percentage. The Bengals offense has looked pretty darn good over the last few weeks with Jake Browning turning it up. The Vikings this week are a difficult matchup just with how they can muddy up the game and kind of drag you down to their level and blitz you from everywhere or drop 8. So this might not be the best matchup to start him, but he is the pickup, and he is the number 2 running back. The Trevion Williams handcuff option seems to be done right now. So Chase Brown is a pickup for some value, and if Joe Mixon were to go down, Brown really has a RB1 potential role there. Zamir White, next name we're going to hit with Josh Jacobs going down with a knee injury. Second-year player, hasn't seen more than 5 touches in the game or 5 opportunities in the game yet. So big mystery. But if Josh Jacobs is out for a while, his matchups the rest of the season are pretty juicy. They're the Chargers this week on Thursday night. And that is one thing to mention with Josh Jacobs is that with their matchup being on Thursday night, there is a higher possibility he misses. If that's the case, Zamir White and Amir Abdullah would see the majority of the work. Chargers this week have been really, really bad against the run for most of the season. So they give up some points. This would be a great first start opportunity for Jacobs. For Zamir White. Next in week 16 is the Chiefs, which aren't a great matchup, but still they've been struggling a little more lately. And then week 17 in your championship round is the Colts, who aren't very good despite their almost winning record, which I still have confusion about, but not the point here. So Zamir White, upside pickup. Not sure if it's going to be more than a 1-week play, but someone to, even if it is a 1-week play, it would be a massive flyer, but someone to keep an eye out on for sure, especially in your dynasty communities and leagues. Last name to bring up, Ty Chandler. As we mentioned, Alexander Madison went down with an ankle injury. We'll see if he misses any time. Cincinnati's not a great matchup, but he'd still be the top guy. He's shown some juice. His overall yards per carry it's been under 4. It's been under 3 a couple times, but they also have not been running the ball very well as a whole. He has some good pass catching ability. Another one of those things where if you have a running back 1 off waivers at this point, that's better than nothing. So wouldn't expect a huge amount of upside from him, but it is possible. Next up are the wide receivers. Last week names we gave were Parker Washington, who had another touchdown. He's been pretty dang good over the last 2 weeks. I think he has 8 catches for 88 yards and it's 2 touchdowns over that span, or at least he did at one point. I remember seeing that graphic. Don't remember at what point in the game that was, though. So he's been good. He's the direct replacement for Christian Kirk, who is going to be done for, I believe, the rest of the fantasy season. So the rookie is probably a decent play for the rest of the year. Other name we gave was Dontavian Wicks, who wasn't great. He only went 2 for 20, but did have 6 targets and 63% of snaps. So if Christian Watson misses any more time, he is still going to be an upside play. I wouldn't be too worried about the Packers after last night's weird showing. Just Monday night off 2 massive wins. The letdown for the youngest team in the league, a letdown kind of seemed like it was going to happen. And then Cedric Tillman, one of my favorite prospects coming out, didn't do much. David Bell had a long touchdown on kind of a fluky play. Still, Tillman's still significantly more talented and better than him, so really it was just kind of an unlucky draw there, but that'll happen. Still think he's more of a dynasty stash than a redraft play at this point. But with Flacco slinging it around, if there is another injury to Amari Cooper, could see it. Names we're going to hit this week. First, Noah Brown. With Tank Dell going out for the season last week and Nico Collins going down this week as well, Noah Brown's really the last man standing, him and Robert Woods. And honestly, I don't even know who the next wide receiver is on the team. Trying to remember, and no names are popping up, though I'm sure there's some random fella out there. There is a lot of concern here after he was injured and missed 2 or 3 games, and in the 2 games he's played since has seen 7 targets with no catches, so that's scary. The injury to CJ Stroud also is scary. Don't really want to play Noah Brown if Davis Mills is throwing him the ball. But the 2 weeks prior to his injury, he was, if you remember, a top 8 wide receiver. I believe it was a wide receiver 2 and 7 overall finish. With Stroud, he was playing spectacularly. And if he is a wide receiver 1 now, he's going to see targets. especially with Dalton Schultz still banged up, running back situation being weird. They have to give the ball to someone's. Why not Noah Brown and Robert Woods is another name. So Titans are their matchup this week. They've been a very good matchup. So it's a good play. I believe it is a very good play. Even if Nico Collins does come back, they have the Titans 2 out of the next 3. So Noah Brown still, I believe, is a good play for pretty much the rest of the season, especially while Nico's out. Next name, we're going to stay in the AFC South. Zay Jones. Since coming back, he has 22 targets over the last 2 games, including 14 this week. Only 10 total catches, which not a great conversion rate, but Trevor Lawrence was injured this week, which saw the 5 of 14. Probably Lawrence was off a little bit, so hobbled by that ankle, I'm sure. But hopefully with another week is more prepared, healthy, and ready to go. They are playing the Ravens this week, which scary matchup, but with how Jacksonville's looked, they're going to be down early and going to need to be chucking the ball around to come back like this week. So hopefully we see some garbage time from Zay Jones. Or if they're getting up, hopefully it's from up early, and the surprise it is from a couple deep touchdowns, which Zay Jones over the middle could work. Last name we're going to give is from the Ravens' opponent this week, the Rams, and it is Demarcus Robinson, who with Tutu Atwell being injured is the third receiver on the team. He has 15 targets in the last 2 weeks and a touchdown in each of those games as it's really their more big receiver, which is funny from a Demarcus Robinson type, but he's been good for them. He was good for the Chiefs in spurts over the past few years, and now with the Sean McVay offense, he's been making some plays for him. They have the Commanders this week, which is a spectacular matchup. Rams haven't thrown the ball all over the yard. Kind of expect that to happen still. So hopefully we see Demarcus Robinson still have another decent game. Don't think he's like a wide receiver 2 sort of play. I would say a wide receiver 3 or 4, but does have that touchdown upside from having one in back-to-back games. So the last position we are going to get to are the tight ends. Last week, the name we gave was Brevin Jordan, who, as pretty much everyone in Houston, kind of stunk. I think he still had 3 for 34, which, I mean, you can live with that as a tight end streamer, but obviously you're hoping for a little more. And again, do think the theory there does still play out with being down a couple big wide receivers that they should be in 2 tight end sets a lot more. And Jordan is an athletic player, so hopefully we see some more from him. But our name this week is Tyler Conklin for the Jets, the resurgent Jets with Zach Wilson, who had the best game of his career last week. He has seen 6 targets in 4 of his last 6 games, which includes the 3 games that Zach Wilson started. Wilson has been targeting him more than anyone not named Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall. And those 2 are stars, but Conklin is the safety net over the middle at this point. In Zach Wilson's last 3 starts, Conklin's been a top 20 tight end. Again, not massive upside, but as a streamer, that's if you're dealing with injuries, if you're trying to piece it together after a Mark Andrews injury or just kind of been struggling on the year at tight end, you can do a lot worse than Tyler Conklin. Really has kind of been what a lot of us expected Hayden Hurst to be this year, and hopefully he recovers as well. We did not mention that, but he has a post-traumatic amnesia thing going on, so prayers and thoughts to him. Hopefully he can get right and be back next year. But Conklin has a Dolphins matchup who prior to Monday night were a bottom 8 matchup to tight ends, but Chico Okonkwo did have a pretty decent game. And Conklin has kind of been, weird to say matchup proof for a lower tier player, but he's been pretty consistent overall in the year. It's going to give you 6 targets, a couple catches, 8 yards catch. It's really all you can ask for from a streamer. So that is all of the names we have for now. I'm not seeing any questions in here still, so we'll give you guys just another little bit to ask any, and feel free to ask about any position, trades, if you have them now, or dynasty related. And I guess we'll give that another little minute. But before we go, just another reminder to go to the idpguys.org to check out our rankings, the start sits some start sit advice from previews, reviews, our snap count tool, our team fantasy position or points allowed by position, where you can go in and see, oh, how our team's stacking up at allowing points to cornerbacks, and you can rank that by average points given up. So that's been very useful for me over the last few weeks since that's come out. So yep. And if you do subscribe to the website, you can get access to our Discord, where you have myself, Justin, Sean, and all of our other writers in there. You can ask questions too about so many different topics at different times, from Star Wars to dynasty leagues to a start sit to random commissioner questions. There's also our newsletter that we send out weekly that always has some awesome material in it. And yep, still not seeing any questions come in. So thank you guys for taking a listen, and really appreciate it. It's been a blast over the last, for the first, 14th show we've done this in 15 weeks. So thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you get into the playoffs if playoffs have not started. And hopefully if you are in the playoffs, that you win this first round. And we will see you same time, same place next week with Justin back. And I want to thank Justin again for his work in the doc, and thank Sean again last week for jumping on. So thank you guys. Go win some matchups. May the force be with you. Bye-bye.